Welcome to the Scuttlebutt Podcast. I'm Rich Mellon of Trapping Inc. TV.
And I'm Sandi Mellon. And this episode, whatever we call it, of our podcast is brought to you from the living room of our home.
Okay. We usually do it down in the basement where we have a bunch of our taxidermy. And we have a bunch up here as well.
Or at the cabin.
Or at the cabin. But
yeah.
You see, it's cold outside. It's, I don't know, about 0 Fahrenheit, minus 20 Celsius. And we heat our house with geothermal. The floor, the slab downstairs has hydronic heating in it. It's very nice to walk on. I find it very comfortable. But you know the Queen of Fire. This is where the fireplace is.
So and this is where I'm very comfortable. So
she's got to sit in front of the fireplace, and old Rich, she's starting to sweat. Well, one of the things that is really neat, the news that we want to tell you is, God bless you folks, but the podcast has really taken off.
Yeah, all of a sudden it's really jumped. And I think a lot of it has got to do with now it's trapping season and people are looking for things that they can listen to or watch. I
think part of it, though, is our airing on the Pursuit Channel in the United States.
Yes.
Because we do have one of our billboards talks about coming to, talks about the Scuttlebutt podcast, and it talks about coming to our website and where you can connect with everything. And I think that's maybe the jump we're seeing. But in Canada, we busted the top 40 on the charts in Canada.
That's pretty cool.
That's very cool. For us, it's very cool. And in the U.S., we have peaked at 105. We hit as high as 105, and that's with us being very, very poor work ethic recently because we've been so busy doing everything else. And I'm gone, you're gone.
Lots of people asking, are you guys not doing podcasts anymore? And it isn't that at all. It's just, it's the busyness of the season,
here's the worst part, the absolute worst part. This would have started more rumors today. I actually thought, because you're on the road, I'm on the road, I actually thought about doing this by Skype. But then I thought, what would that say to our folks out there if we had to do a Skype podcast with our spouses?
Well, and next week I'm on the road for work, and the week after I'm on the road for a provincial board that I sit on. So, yeah, it was either today or probably no day for the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, or do it by Skype. Yeah.
Or do it by Skype, and we just thought, nah. It's probably not a good idea.
Today's podcast, so I want to talk a little bit about trapping season that started for us, and I want to get around and talk about NAFA.
Yes.
And what has happened in selling our furs to the fur market. And all good conversations. Got lots I want to talk about. Of course, when don't I have lots to talk about? Muskrat season this year actually started out pretty good.
It did.
Unbelievably, though, we've had so much water here. And it has rained and rained and rained and never quit raining. And yeah, I know. I'm right beside your bed, aren't I? Yeah. Okay, we'll lay on it. And we ended up, usually when you go into fall, the rain stops. And when the rain stops, then water starts to drop off. That surplus drops off, and you kind of hit that level that it will spend the winter at. But it didn't happen this year. It stayed really, really high. And I don't know. I didn't know what that was going to cause, but it caused some really unique situations.
Yeah, it sure did.
For one thing, you know the years when everybody thinks there are so many muskrats because they build those cattail colonies everywhere? Well, that's actually this year. And yeah, there is lots of muskrats, but no more than any other year.
Yeah.
And I think it's just got to do with because the water's so high.
Well, the water is very high, and it made our little, just over here from our house, it made it very difficult to get around.
Well, yeah, we'll get to that. But I think what the problem was is that when the water is at that lower level, I think you have a lot more muskrats that live in the bank. And then when the water becomes so high, well, now it keeps going up. It's easier for them to build a colony than to dig another bank. And I could be 100% wrong on that. If somebody out there has a PhD in muskratology, tell me. But this year we even had colonies built in the puddle in our backyard. We have a dugout in our backyard or burrow pit, if you want to call it, because we needed dirt to bury the house. And this year, for the first time ever, we have colonies built in there. And we always have a few muskrats in it, and I trap it every year. And the same thing over in all these other little bodies of water. But there are just colonies everywhere. And I think it's because the water level is so high that they're just not being able to access those banks, right?
Yeah.
Well, the water level actually has the water in behind the cattails. Usually the cattails end at about 3-4 feet of water, and it goes straight down to the bottom around here, and then the cattails grow right up onto dry land. They really just need mud, basically. But this year now there's lots of water in behind the cattails, and maybe it's they're not comfortable with the lack of security. I'm don't sure what it is, but the only difference between this year and the last couple of years is the incredibly high water.
Yeah, very high water. And everywhere we're seeing more muskrat push-ups.
Yeah.
Where we haven't seen those for probably the last 3 years.
Yeah, and what the muskrat push-up is, it's when they build that clump of weeds up on top of the ice, and they build it as the ice is forming. What that is, and it's away from shore. They don't live in there. That's his breath of air. Okay, so he swims from shore out, and he'll be going down. That's where his patch of coontail or whichever weed it is,
whatever
that he's,
vegetation it is that he's or she is eating.
That he's eating, and he will go down and he will get that, and he's got to come back up and eat it, and so he'll eat it inside that little hut out there, that little
dome,
weed hut,
more or less.
We call them push-ups, and they're a great place to trap. We can trap them there anyway. Some places I understand it's against the law to target the push-up, but that is his breath of air, and that's where it's so hard when you have mink, especially, or coyotes. They come across the lake and they will dig out every one of those push-ups. I don't know how successful coyotes are at catching a muskrat in that situation, unless they're like a polar bear and they dig it out and they sit there and wait till one pops up.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know, but I did see. There's another pond that I drive by all the time when I'm on my way to work, and it looks like coyote tracks, or maybe a fox or something, but more likely a coyote that has gone out on that one pond where we turn the corner. And they've been at that one push-up because you can see very clearly in the snow. And we've had a little bit of fresh snow. Yeah,
but I know with the mink, they'll be getting under the ice, and mink do target muskrat a lot. But the problem with either one of the coyote or the mink digging out that push-up is then now it freezes. Because it needs those weeds over top, and it needs that muskrat coming in and out, and that to keep the ice from forming across that hole. And then all of a sudden, the muskrats are bound into a much more restricted area that they can go. It's kind of a unique little situation they've got. But we have out on the big trap line, we notice that when the mink come through, you don't have a lot of muskrat out there. And you'll have a little pond. You'll notice one year there's a push-up, and then the next year there's 9 push-ups, and the year after that there's 18. And then usually a mink comes through, and then the next year
cleans
there's no.
Them all out.
The next year there's no push-ups, and
it starts all over again. It's the circle of life.
Absolutely, circle of life. I mean, mink, 60% of their diet here is muskrat.
Yeah.
So they're pretty ferocious little machines that way. One of the things, though, that the problem that the water caused was because it was so high, a lot of these big cattails, what you think is solidly anchored along the shore, all of a sudden floated. Yeah.
And that made life very interesting while we were out we always call it our anniversary cruise. We usually don't start trapping muskrat until the first part of October, and then we really like to finish the month off with, weather permitting, more muskrats, because they're even more prime at that point.
Yeah. So these great huge mats of cattail, and calling them a mat isn't really fair either until you understand what happens afterwards. But they're, like I say, it's this whole rim around the ponds is solid cattails, probably for 40, 50 feet in some places, right?
Yeah.
Maybe more in some places.
Yeah.
But
just depends how low the water is, like what kind of a slope there is and whatnot.
And this year, now all of a sudden, all of them are floating. It used to be that you could walk out right to the edge of the cattails because they were solid on bottom. Well, now they're floating.
Yeah.
And
that would have been a mistake this year.
you'd have fell through in a hurry.
Not me.
We have on this one, not you. Oh, I just missed that one. Was that a zing?
Maybe just a little bit.
Or were you saying that you're fitting into a smaller size pair of pants?
Sure, that too.
Anyway, we have one place that we go in, and there's this canal that the beavers have made over the years. They've been back and forth logging it, and so they cleaned out the cattail, so we call it the canal. It's not like the Erie Canal or anything like that. But with these cattails floating, then we get the big fall winds, right?
Yes.
And it starts blowing stuff around, and those cattails move up and down. Pretty soon, clumps of them. Some of them are this big around, and some of them are half the size of a house, start drifting.
Yeah.
Well, we had a couple of them, I don't know.
Well,
3, 4, I guess, ended up in the canal.
In the canal. So Mr. Genius over here says, I'll throw the anchor on that, and then we will paddle, and we'll drag it out of here. Ready, set, go. So I am paddling at the front of the canoe without eyes in the back of my head because I had a toque on. And I am digging, and it felt like I was going backwards. He goes, no, keep going. You're making progress.
Okay, well, two things here. 2 points I want to make. First, when we hit the end of the rope, we didn't go nowhere. And so I thought, well, I'll pull on the rope and that'll give some extra impetus. And it did. And she was right. We were going backwards. But we actually dislodged the particular clump. And as soon as the wind got it, well, it was gone. But second point.
Okay.
That exercise is part of the reason why the smaller set of pants. It was for your own good, honey.
Are you listening, ladies? Gentlemen, I just say, don't go with that.
Oh, come on. Life would be so boring without me around to upset the apple cart.
Well, now that's true. That is true.
We ended up, though, having a very unusual effect on our trapping. Because we always go out and we set with the stakes and with the Hague's brackets and the Hague's spring clips.
Yeah.
Well, when you've got these clumps of cattails blowing around everywhere, they blow them over. They roll right over top of your stakes. They knock them off on an angle. We lost some stakes and had to go back the next day. The wind would clear off, and well, there's your stake laying sideways in the water. And
we were lucky that we found a lot of them because those stakes are not easy. Like if they blow over, then they just sink because the trap is attached to them. So yeah, and if it's leaning just on an angle, even you're not catching anything either.
Because the rat doesn't have to for one thing. But more likely, it's like a swim up diner for him for that carrot there. It's right at
because we have a little clip with a carrot on the top of it, and the whole idea behind those, if you've ever watched one of the shows with the Hague's brackets on it, is that they go to grab that carrot, they step in the trap, and she's all over.
Don't quit talking because I'm going to drink coffee. Just keep going.
Okay. I was looking for you to add more.
Well, I was going to, and I will. And
everyone's surprised.
Yeah. So I mean, we just knocking them out of level can stop them from trapping. So we had to go back to our floats this year.
Yes.
And which is not preferable, and here's the reason: is because it's lots of extra paddling.
And lots of weight.
Well, because you keep up a canoe, even though we got an 18-foot canoe over there. We have, I don't know how many. I didn't even want to count how many I got. 25, 30 floats. Yeah. 2 traps per float. That's a lot of weight.
It is a lot of weight, and it's bulky as well. So we end up making maybe more than one trip. And that's where the Hague's brackets and those. What are
the spring clips?
Yeah, but the stakes, they're made out of
fiberglass poles. Yeah,
and so not very heavy, doesn't take up very much room, very easy to maneuver around and whatnot.
That's how much room 4 dozen of them takes up.
Yeah, exactly.
Just like that. And you by 5 feet long. You throw them in the bottom, and you know, they're really, really simple, and they're visual, easy to check, and that just didn't work this year.
But it's an unusual year. We haven't had water like this in, I'll bet you we had about 20 inches of rain here.
More than, yeah.
And then, you know, everywhere in northern Alberta seemed to be a lot of rain, and it started raining before we left for Africa this year. We were gone for a whole month, and there was more and more and more, and the farmers here are really suffering because there is 50 to 60% of the canola is still laying in swaths in the fields, and some of the cereal crops are laying out as well. Thankfully, most of the farmers got their peas off. They usually come off early here, and wheat and barley did come off, and you know, some people had to make changes to how they harvested. It's just been a mess. Lots of grain drying going on. It's been massive, and it's all over the place in probably central, northern and more towards the middle of the province, I guess. Because we have friends and family around the Edmonton area that have been deeply affected by it as well. And
it's not good in Saskatchewan either.
No,
it's very
we
wet
saw
there.
that as well.
A lot still left out over there, which is too bad. And you know, God bless the farmers. I hope that at least with canola, they can take it off after the snow leaves and that, and they do lose grading, but at least they get it off, right?
Yeah. So I mean, we're very fortunate. As interesting and difficult as it has been on the muskrat trapping side, it's nowhere near what some of our friends and family have experienced otherwise. That
was the last day. I left them out one day too long.
Oh, yeah. I was at work.
Because, I mean, I'm really whacking rats. I'm catching lots of rats and big rats.
Big this year.
What a year for big rats.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's got to do with, you know, she can have, a female muskrat can have like 4 litters a year.
Yeah.
You know, and so I think sometimes you just hit it where there's been a whole crop of new ones, and you get all those. I'm the king of the extra smalls. You know.
Sometimes we have had the extra smalls,
which are just as much work as a triple XL,
but don't pay you quite as much.
No. Sometimes I think the worst I ever did was like 83 cents for one.
Oh,
but I have, you know, last year we did. I think we averaged $5 Canadian, something like that, for all of our rats. And this year is looking like it's going to be better. Like the fur forecasts look like rats are going to come back again. So I'm banging some big rats, and I leave it out one day too long. It was supposed to rain, and I thought, okay, I can, you know. So
rain I can deal with.
Yeah,
he says.
Yeah, we got 6 or 8 inches of wet snow. So what's that do? Well, the top of all of the water now. There is this slush that's this thick.
Yep.
Okay. Do you know what it's like trying to paddle a canoe in that?
I would guess it's kind of like dragging a clump of cattails around the lake.
That's good for you. That's good for you. This was unbelievable work. And one of the things that you never think about is that canoe won't turn. You've got an 18-foot keel that is sticking down there, and it's straight in the line, and that's
the path.
When it's in a semi-solid like that slush on top of the, I can't get it to turn.
Oh, I'm so glad I wasn't there. I might have murdered somebody.
I practically had to shovel out every time I wanted to turn around. You know, like it was like a 3-point turnaround with a canoe. It was just hilarious.
So true.
But we got it. We got it done, and we had a pretty good muskrat season. And we've got them all put up. They're all in good shape.
How many did we get?
100, 200. I don't know.
Oh, okay.
Didn't bother counting yet. I count before I ship, and I guess that's a really good segue into what's going on with NAFA.
Yeah. So anyone who has sold fur or shipped fur through NAFA will.
There's 2 large auction houses. I'm sorry to interrupt. 2 large auction houses. It's been NAFA, North American Fur
Auctions.
Fur auctions, and Fur Harvesters, FHA. Okay, both were based out of Canada. NAFA was in Toronto was where the auction took place, and Fur Harvesters is in North Bay, Ontario. Now, continue. They I was just throwing it back to you, Sam.
Continue.
Those have been the two big auction houses, and NAFA was the largest. And actually, NAFA started as the Hudson Bay Company just about 400 years ago.
Yeah, a long, long history. And as anyone who took social studies in the years, well, maybe they don't teach this in social studies anymore. We don't have children, haven't had children in elementary school for a long time. But the fur trade opened a lot of the West. And as we were talking here with a friend of ours not that long ago, a lot of the very first settlements or towns, if you like, were trading posts that were opened in the North because of primarily the beaver trade. So anyway, that's the history that goes back with
Hudson Bay Companies.
Yeah, Hudson Bay Company.
And originally there was two of them, there was Hudson Bay and James Bay, and then they amalgamated. But 384 years that this has been going. And it's terrible to see this happen. Everybody says, well, they ask me what I'm going to do or what's going on, and because I'm on the inside. Yeah, I'm on the inside. Yeah, we get special treatment here. I think our fur check was the first one to bounce.
Yeah, unfortunately. And I mean, if there is a silver lining, it wasn't much. We know people that had much larger checks that were not honored. And there was a lot of talk from NAFA that they were working with their bank and that they expected to have a solution and nobody panic and so on. And so nobody panicked. But at the end of the day, our $100 is in the wind because NAFA did end up being in receivership.
Worse than that, though, we do have a bunch of Martin there that are all select.
We do.
And because of in the last auction, they didn't get the reserve that they wanted on them. They didn't sell them. So, meaning, I mean, the select animals is a high quality animal.
Yes.
And I was lucky because this was their second auction of 2019. The first one was when a vast majority of our stuff went.
Right.
All sold really, really well. Got pretty good prices. The prices are on a bit of a rebound. And then after the second one, they sent out checks and everything, and then they started having problems. And people's checks started bouncing. Ours bounced. And then they were going to take care of it. They would let them know what your bank charges were and everything. They would take care of all that. And then eventually they got forced into creditor protection. And it looks like now, don't quote me because I may not have this right. There's been so much communication all over out there, but it looks like CIBC, Canadian Imperial Bank of Commerce, is their banker, and of course they are the first. They would hold first position on any income, and so I don't know what that's going to mean to my fur that's there or to the check that's bounced. Probably if I bet on it being lost, that's a good way to think about it.
Well, for sure the check will be, I'm thinking.
Yes. Resident banker.
Once you're in receivership, protected creditors, secured creditors are paid first, and everybody else is paid last, if at all. And sometimes it's a fraction of what you're owed. Now, the one thing that we don't know about is the status of the fur that was held on consignment, because that is our fur.
Yeah, it's on consignment, but there's a weird thing that's going on here. One of the first debtors that has stepped in here is AFERs. Now, I'm not sure of the proper terminology. Does it mean they're the receiver or whatever it is? But AFERs was a company that they are fur ranchers. And a very large international fur rancher. NAFA got in bed with them, and they bought into Saga, and Saga bought into them, or something like that. I'm not sure. Anyway, there is a business relationship there because at one time, NAFA sold like 100 million ranched mink in 1 year. And it became the whole focus of the auction and of the company and everything else was the ranched fur and I may not be popular with my thoughts on that because I don't think that that's a good thing for our industry.
Well, wild fur seemed to take a back seat.
It did, because
to a lot of what was going on in the auction.
You had that burgeoning middle class going on in Asia and China and that, and fur was a very big deal for them. But of course, the only thing that they could get in the numbers that they wanted was mink.
Yeah.
Right. And in reality, when it comes to building a fur coat, for the main part of the coat, it might take 40 mink. Well, I can take 40 mink out of the same lot, out of the same fur shed, and they will all match. Whereas they might have to separate through several hundred of my wild mink to come up with the 40 to make that match enough to make that coat. So I can see the economics of that, the scale, right? But the whole problem was then they really quit promoting in North America, or at least that I could see. They ended up going to Asia, and they had all of these design and technical schools on how to work with fur and all that kind of stuff. And they just totally abandoned North America. And then you have a company like Canada Goose, which is just taken the world by storm. Yeah. And that's got wild fur on it.
Yeah.
You know, so I had discussions with fellas there and expressed my feeling, and they didn't feel it was that way. We agreed to disagree. Okay. Yeah. But what happened? What actually ended up happening? It was after the big flood of fur going from here into China had to do with corruption. It was being smuggled in, and it wasn't being taken in a correct way. They were not paying customs and duties and that on it the way it was supposed to be.
So a lot of those people that were importing ended up in jail.
Absolutely, they're in jail, and they'll never see the light of day again. And because over there, you might cheat on your taxes here, but you don't in a communist country.
Well, who knows what the real story behind everything is? But the bottom line is that NAFA's no longer in business, and
well, what happened though? I mean, because they had all of that fur, all of that ranch fur, and it's like any other auction house, whether it's auctioning equipment or whatever, they have a reserve bid, and so they had guaranteed all of these. Saga furs, they had guaranteed them a reserve bid and everything, and it just wasn't happening because the bottom fell out of the market in China, and it's gone. And now they can't get it up to say the reserve bid was $20 on a female mink. Well, now they can't come anywhere near that. You know, it's pushing around $12, so they don't sell it. But they still had to pay that $20 reserve to Saga Furs, because it's the same thing if I take my trailer or truck into Ritchie Brothers, and they guarantee me X dollars.
Whether and they don't get it, they still have to pay out the guarantee.
Exactly, and that's what actually took NAFA down, was that they couldn't cover those reserves for the ranchers. So a lot of people now are really upset. They're concerned. They're worried about where it's going and what's going to happen to the fur market. And I understand that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a big change. They have been the face of fur auctions for forever.
Yeah.
But we still have another very old and well-established auction house, which is Fur Harvesters. And I was just reading through a media blast that they sent out in their market forecast. Things are looking much better. That things are picking up. Once again, of course, top quality is going to go for the most. And that
shouldn't surprise anybody.
No. The only place where the demand will carry down through the rankings and that will be coyotes. Because there is such a huge demand for coyotes.
Yeah,
so you can still, even a lesser quality coyote, you still get some bucks for.
Yep.
And the better quality ones are going to go very high. Yeah. Things like lynx cat are doing really well. Large clear lynx are doing good.
What's a clear lynx?
Well, that's where later in the season they have no brown on their belly whatsoever. It's very white. Okay, and which makes it look a lot like the bobcat, which the bobcat or lynx cat is the most desirable when it comes to making coats, and it's that belly is what it's all about. Beaver, if you're going to do beaver, do it in the wintertime. The high quality beaver are going for felting, and it's actually
and that has made a real comeback.
It has, but here's the deal: is that even though they grade it, whether it's a fall beaver, like a blue or a white, a winter heavy winter, they buy it by the pound.
Yeah.
Okay, so
your heavy winter beavers are going to be worth more because they're heavier.
exactly, they've got a lot more for that felting, right? So it's not even so much as the quality of fleshing or anything that you've done. It's that whether or not it's a heavy winter or not, and that's strictly they're going to flip it over and they're going to look at it, and the whiter that leather can be, then it's going to go into the winter,
into the heavier pile. So, or the other thing that you can do, and anyone that's watched our show, the last show of season 5, which you can find on YouTube now, if you're not connected on any other channel, we took 21 beaver to and had them all tanned and sheared. And then we took them to a furrier friend of ours in Red Deer, Alberta, called Sisson Furs, and they made a blanket for us out of 20 of those beaver. Yeah. And it is one of the most luxurious things I've ever encountered. It's spectacular. So, there's something else that you can do, either, to sell it yourself or just to enjoy your own fur. That I think a lot of trappers are actually doing that now and looking at the beauty of what they can keep and do for themselves.
Oh, unbelievable. And I got to say this, and you'll agree with me after you turn red.
Oh, good.
That beaver blanket is the sexiest thing ever been on that bed other than you. There you go, red.
Sometimes it's better to say nothing.
Oh, I had to. No, it is fabulous. I can't believe how nice that is.
Yeah.
It's remarkable.
And I think they still have one of our skins, and I'm hoping that it might be a pillow one day.
Yeah, I heard you're going to have them turn a zebra into his purse. Mm-hmm.
Yes, I am. When we were in Africa last year, well, you get turned on to the idea of what you can do with skins or pelts or whatever. And it's amazing what is out there. And if you think about how you can turn that into something that's a usable item. So I shot a very large zebra stallion when we were in Africa this year in June. And just a beautiful hide on him, regardless of whether or not they're with scars or not. That gives character, in my opinion. Yeah, he's got lots of scars.
Good thing she's into scars, guys.
And lots of character. So somebody said, because I have a beautiful pedestal shoulder mount that I had my very first zebra done from. Are you going to make a rug out of this one, Sandi? They said. And I said, actually, no, I'm going to have the skin tanned so that I can have a purse made out of it and then maybe some pillows. Yeah. For either our bed or out here on the couch or whatever. But just something that's, artistic and it's a little different.
You're a lady of eclectic tastes. I'm glad that I fit your definition of eclectic. Probably the nicest thing anybody ever said about me. He's eclectic.
That you're eclectic.
Yeah.
Okay. Good to know.
Anyway, we wandered down that rabbit hole. Back to NAFA and what's happened to the fur trade. I think we're actually going to see good prices this year.
For wild fur.
Yes, for wild fur, because fur harvesters, that's all they do.
Yes.
Yeah. They have in the past gone to Helsinki in Finland and had an auction there that involved some ranched fur, but their 2 auctions this year. The first one is in March 28th, and the last receiving date for it is June 19th. They are all going to be wild fur, okay? And if you don't have an account with them, go look them up, fur harvesters on the internet. One of the terrible things that happened with NAFA going under was a lot of ranchers got hurt, but a lot of friends and employees, and one of them was Mary.
Yes, Mary Schellenberg has worked for NAFA for a very long time. But the really good news for Mary and for all of us who ship or will ship through fur harvesters is that Mary is going to be working for them, or is already working for them.
Yes, Fur Harvesters bought the building that Mary ran, the building in Winnipeg, and did all the Western fur for NAFA. If you ever had a problem with NAFA and you phoned it up and you spoke to an angel in Winnipeg, you were talking to Mary.
Yeah.
Brilliant angel too. She always had the answers.
Very lucky to have her on our side in all of this, and that she's found a new home after all of this. Because even as trappers and business people shipping fur and so on, all of those people who got hurt, there were others that got hurt too, and one of them was Mary. Yeah.
There is going to be a big flux anytime that you pull something that giant out of an economy, a market, or anything else. That leaves a big hole, and everything rushes into, nature abhors a vacuum. And all of a sudden, there's how many different fur buyers have popped up this year?
Yeah,
like Halfords is going to be buying fur. If you want, you can go there and sell fur directly to Halfords. I think I forget. You look on their website, whether it's every day during the week, but Steve will be there buying fur. He'll buy it from directly, cut you a check.
Yeah, and there are still those that will continue to buy fur that have always bought fur, because we've got friends and others that we know of that have been in this area and will buy fur.
Brian Finlayson.
Yeah.
And what's the other fella? Taves? The fella who does always has the fur at the rendezvous.
Oh, yes. I can't remember. Anyway, his name's on the tip of my tongue, and I can't think of it.
Yeah.
Gordy Clausen also has bought fur. I'm not sure whether
I don't
he's
know
doing
whether Gordy is or not. I know he will be a shipper for fur harvesters. A lot of the places that where you used to take your fur to ship to NAFA, you'll now be able to ship to fur harvesters.
But contact fur harvesters themselves if you have any question about, fur buyers in your area or fur depots in your area, wherever. I mean, there's lots of them, and we could go on for days about it. But I think it's really important that you contact fur harvesters directly.
I think the auctions this year for fur harvesters are going to go well.
Yeah.
And I think part of it's going to be because there's going to be a lot of people that's going to just hold their cards close to their vest and not send fur. Mm-hmm. And now you're going to have, rather than the portion of the fur buyers in the world that used to come to them, and some of them only went to NAFA, now you're going to have all of them have to go to fur harvesters. And I think there's going to be a much higher demand at those auctions than they've ever seen before. And I don't think they're going to have the fur that they had just because people are not sure.
Well, yeah, I mean, there is that uncertainty out there, but there's also not going to be as much of the ranched that's going to be there either.
No, there's
right?
none going to be at fur harvesters.
Right.
That's not an issue.
But just ranched fur overall, in terms of available for sale otherwise.
Yeah, like Saga Furs that took over. It seems like they have taken over the wild fur or all the fur that's on consignment, and they will sell it off, and then I guess they'll pay themselves first. And I don't know how.
I'm not sure how that's going to go. I think there's a lot of legal wrangling still going on with that, because I'm not sure how they could sell everything that's there on consignment and claim the first checks for themselves when the consigned items don't belong to them.
No, that's exactly it, and that would make me pretty angry. And I'm a pretty easygoing guy, because that's not right. There's a lot of folks that have a lot of fur there.
Yeah.
And I mean, what we've got there will neither break me nor destroy me, but it still angers me that a fur rancher would be getting the money for it.
Well, we don't know that, so that's just
no, you're right. We don't know. But they are going to go ahead and have an auction. I know they're having an auction, and that auction Saga Furs will have an auction, and it will be predominantly the ranch stuff. And that's because since the crash of the ranch market that happened when the Chinese people went to jail and all that, we went from having 100 million mink pelts being sold a year. Now we're down to 20 or less million, and everybody's pelting out. You can't keep those animals on the shelf. They live on average 4 years, and they have to be pelted out at that point. And so the people are pelting out and they're selling out, and so that's going to bring some balance back into the market, right? And more demand, I believe.
I think so too, but at the end of the day, it remains to be seen what the fallout's going to be from all of this. But we're quite optimistic.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like anything else. When one person disappears, one big player disappears, like there'll be 30 little guys run in, and it'll find balance as well.
Yeah.
It's amazing how it works, and everybody was having a fit because it was the end of fur and fur sales. It's not even close.
No,
not even close. The guys at Fur Harvesters, I know Mark Downey, the owner, president, chairman, whatever Mark is, he'll be happy to hear that.
Probably should have looked that up.
I've talked to him so many times and shook his hand, and I mean, he's a great guy, and he's always done a good job for the wild fur guys. They have that Mackenzie Valley stamp,
yes,
which is for the fellas to the north. It is a stamp that indicates that that's where the fur came from, and it's in great. That fur is always in great demand with the high quality buyers. I mean, they've done a lot.
And it is because it is high quality fur, and that's one of the things that, even though anybody that knows anything about trapping and weather and climate and all of that goes on, where we are in the north and where our trap line is, those guys are even further north. But that's where you get the heaviest fur from.
Yep.
And prime is prime, but heavy is different than prime.
Prime has to do with daylight,
Yep.
and it's how thick the leather is. As they get less and less daylight, the leather gets thicker and thicker. Okay, so there's a thicker coating over the roots of the hairs, and that's why you don't see the blue anymore.
Correct.
The blue is the roots of the hair, but full and heavy comes from how cold it gets.
Correct.
Okay, so you can get animals that get prime, far south from us, but they'll never get full or heavy.
Correct.
Because they just don't get cold enough.
And that's why the coyotes in this area, western coyotes, are one of the sought after furs as well, right?
I know, and the weather finally turned here. And I know, looking at the chest here, I'm starting to get full and heavy. The pelt's getting pretty good there.
Okay.
Let's do a commercial.
Oh, let's do a commercial.
This is since our podcast is doing so good, Old Smokes has decided to come on and sponsoring our podcast, Old Smokes Coffee. So that's OLE. And if you go to oldsmokescoffee.com, OLE smokescoffee.com, and you can use our
promo code.
Our promo code. We have a promo code. Get you 10% off of your online order. All you use is the promo code Trapping Inc. One word, Trapping Inc.
So that's INC, not INK.
Yeah. You wouldn't think that would be an issue, would you?
No, but yeah.
I tell people.
Inc. is short for incorporated.
Yeah.
So that's why.
God's my witness, I thought everybody knew that.
Well.
But we get stuff sent here, checks, and thankfully nobody at the bank ever looks, but they'll have Trappers Inc. So Trappers and then INK. And we're Trapping Inc.
It's okay. The check's still cash.
Oh, yeah, they cash. So. Yeah. Anyway, it has been a wonderful time to be back here with you guys, catching up a little bit more. And things are really happening. We're hoping to get more of these out in a big hurry. It's been a pleasure, my doll.
Always a pleasure. Sometimes a surprise. Thanks for being with us.
And hopefully we see you guys down the line.